Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first breakout session of the day. My name's John Monroe, and I'm the Director of Content at GovLoop. I hope you had a chance to check out our opening keynote session with Sarah and Mary. What a great session that was. And there is so much more good stuff to come. And actually, that good stuff continues now. We're going to be talking about how to write to get the results you need. And you know, this is an important topic for everyone, no matter what your job is. Whether it's writing a proposal for a new grant, an inter-office memo, or even your own annual performance review, clear, concise, and persuasive writing is key to your success. However, good writing doesn't come easy. As someone who makes a living writing, I can tell you it still doesn't come easy. And it can be especially difficult in the government world with all its antiquated and bureaucratic language. But luckily, we have an expert today to help us navigate this. But before I introduce her, I do want to cover a few housekeeping items. First, if you're on Twitter, if you're on X, we'd love to hear what you're learning. Please use the hashtag NextGenGov to share your takeaways. We also have some resources available for you to download, including the amazing slide deck that you're just about to see. You can find those in the resource module on the right-hand side of your console. And of course, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but technical difficulties do happen. And if they do, send us a message through that Q&A tab, and my colleague Jessica will help you out. In that same Q&A portal, you can submit questions to our expert at basically at any time. So she's already made clear she's not going to have a Q&A session at the end. She wants your questions when you have them. But also today, we have an open chat feature. This is where you can interact with your fellow attendees. You'll find that on the top left of your screen. And don't be shy. Your voice is an important part of this event. And by the way, if you have to step away at any time, miss part of a session or miss a whole session, don't worry. We'll email you a link to the entire event tomorrow. So look for that in your email inbox. And finally, I want to let you know that you can earn 1 CPE credit for your participation in today's session. To get that credit, you need to do 3 things. 1, stay and participate for the entire session. 2, take all the polls. And 3, fill out the post-event CPE evaluation form. And you'll find that form in the resource module in your console here, or you can find it in the resource center in the main environment. And all CPE certificates will be emailed directly to you once we confirm you've met all those requirements. All right, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce you to our expert. Joining us today is Trish Lawton. And so Trish is a real expert with lots of insights and experiences to share. But I do want to let you know that we're having a little technical difficulty, so we're just going to be hearing her voice. Sorry, you won't be able to see her picture, but you know what? You're going to get all the great insights no matter what. So Trish, let me hand it over to you.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad that you've decided to register for how to write to get the results you need, because obviously you signed up with some kind of purpose in mind, with some agenda for yourself to improve your writing for whatever reason that might be. And I'm going to presume it's because for your workplace, for your professional writing. So we're going to get into why plain language matters. We're going to advance to the agenda, and just to show you that there are a few things that we will be covering in today's session, and this is just a highlight. We will have an icebreaker in a moment. We're going to go over plain language. We're going to talk about writing do's and don'ts, and takeaways for you at the end of today's session. So we won't leave you empty-handed there. So advancing on to the topics that we will discuss today, we're going to talk about address the reader, why the reader is so monumental and important to have front of mind when you begin your writing assignment. We want to talk about clear and concise writing. What is that? How does that look? And how does that sound? We sort of all know intuitively what clear and concise writing is, but we're going to look a little bit closer into that. And also the voice and tone. How does our writing come across to others when we have written a particular document? What is the tone and the words that are used in that document? And something that we've heard all of our lives, all the way back to probably middle school, definitely high school, avoid lengthy sentences. We've heard them called run-on sentences. We don't want to do that, right? Also, too, continuing on with introduction, sometimes it's just as good to let you know what we will not cover in today's session, because this is all about writing, the written word, right? So we will not be talking about that casual or familiar writing that I sort of call social media type writing, where there's all these abbreviations and people breaking all the grammatical rules and everything. And so none of us are experts, except probably our millennials, in regard to what I call that social media writing. If I were to ask you right now, what does BTW mean? Does anyone know what BTW mean? If you do, go ahead and type it in the chat. Or if I were to say IDK, okay, that's all social media lingo. And sometimes we can write like that if we're writing specifically in that context of it's social media, it's for someone in an email, you get away with that type of writing. But for the professional writing that we need to cover, that's not acceptable. We're going to look at the Plain Language Writing Act itself and how that helps all of the government agencies to focus on plain language writing to meet customer needs and to meet the public needs at large. We will not be covering any type of verbal or oral communication like what's needed in presentation. Some of you might be in Toastmasters or taken Toastmasters where you're sort of honing in on your verbal skills and your presentation, but we will not be going into that form of communication within today's session. And because this is not an English class, we won't be focusing on all of the grammatical points of the English language with punctuations and commas and semicolons and all of that, okay? So that's a little bit about what we will cover today in today's session and what we will not include in today's session. So as you heard John mention a moment ago, I'm inviting you all to participate because I do truly believe you learn more and you remember more when you participate, and also, too, when we involve sort of hands-on. So I'm inviting you throughout today's session to type into the chat at any time you have a question, stop and ask, and also, too, I will be asking you questions, and I'm hoping that you will type into the chat. At times, I will even have you turn to one another to help each other out and providing what knowledge you have on the subject as well. So it's all participatory, okay? So let's get started. I am on slide, what is plain language? What is plain language? I'm asking you your thoughts. Just type into the chat, brief word, short phrase, what do you consider to be plain language? So I'm expecting, you to sort of sound off with some of the words that you've heard or something that you have heard, you believe, your thought. So I'm going to just give you a couple of seconds and just type what is plain language.
So we have one person who says, speaking so a regular person could understand. Simple and clear. Clarity, straightforward, simple and to the point, clear and concise, avoiding jargon and acronyms, one of my favorites. Simple, basic, simple, self-explanatory, simple, clear and concise, straight to the point, lots about concise. Oh, I like this language so a seventh grader can understand.
Oh, you're ahead of me on that one. You get an A.
There we go. Yeah. So, easy reading. Everyone we seem to be kind of gelling around some fairly key points.
Exactly. And I will say you all are right, correct, and spot on. I love those answers. I have to almost ask, why are you in this session today? But, of course, we always look to improve, right? And you do have the right basis, the right concept. I heard some fabulous answers, and there was a person I said that earned an A+ because she said seventh grader. And that has been the understanding across government, that the writing should be at a level that even a seventh grader can understand our government writing, right? We don't want to write over people's heads. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about technical writing because some people may present the opinion that, well, some things are going to be so focused because they are, it's technical. Well, that can be true if you're only writing to other techies, other people, other engineers, other doctors, for example. So in those instances, yes, but generally the government is writing to a broad audience, Americans within the United States. We want to put our documents out there in the public square, in the public domain that is legible and easy reading for most people. And I'm going to say most because there could still be challenges, right? Various challenges. But we're talking in general and overall. So again, give yourself an A. All of those answers were excellent. And so now moving on to the definition of the Plain Writing Act of 2010, because you can easily find this too. So it was great that across the federal sector that brilliant minds came together and says, okay, we need to have something that is going to be accessible and used across all government entities. So the Plain Writing Act of 2010 said that President Barack Obama at the time on October 13th of 2010, that he signed the act that was designed to improve the effectiveness and accountability of federal agencies to the public by promoting clear, so we heard that word, clear government communication that the public can do what? Two things. Here are the operative words we want to focus on. The public can understand and use, right? Understand and use. I need to be able to understand what is written in order to be able to use it. The public is relying on government agencies' information in a multiplicity of ways, right? They're using it. When I used to work for the Department of Agriculture, I didn't tell you all my specific background in regard to currently I am the founder and CEO of Iron to Iron for Women, which is a nonprofit organization to help women transfer their skills and knowledge to business ventures. But I have over 20 years of working in private sector and for the federal government in a variety of different positions. I've worked for a senator. So, of course, the writing at that level and the documents at that level, and then in various larger agencies within my civil service duties at the time. So it gave me an opportunity to sort of see a wide gamut of different documents and documents that were produced at the senior level of position within some government offices where I worked at that time. So we want to make sure that that writing is understood and that it's usable for the public. Okay, and let's go to the next slide. OPM. I said, okay, we're going to provide a definition of plain language. The Office of Personnel Management and every federal agency has employed the act itself, but what they've done, you will find at your agency and at many other agencies, they have customized it, tailored it to their specific agency. They may have expounded on it by adding more information. And I chose the OPM's definition here because I like that they did offer a little bit more insight into what is plain language. And so they're saying that it's grammatically correct. Yes, we don't want to have punctuation incorrect, so we cannot overlook the grammar side of the document. Universally understood. I sort of went back and forth on this one because I'm saying, do they literally mean the universe? Because that might not be everyone, but I get what they're saying here in terms of we're writing for the intent of it being easily readable to our audiences. So we get that, right? It should include good sentence structures, right, and accurate word usage. So make sure that you've selected the appropriate word in the context of your writing. It should not be unprofessional writing. We're not writing to our best friends, to our children. We're writing in an office professional environment. We don't even want to write to dumb down information, as if we're talking down to the reader. If, we consider ourselves, oh, we have a PhD and we're pompous. That can come across in our writing. So we have to be cognizant to think that our writing should be intelligent, but it also should be respectable to the reader as well. Someone earlier had mentioned clear and concise, and we will get more into what that means, but it's sort of self-explanatory. Concise is going to have that brevity to the writing. If we can say the same thing with fewer words, well, let's do that, versus having that long run-on sentence that we had talked about briefly a second or so ago. It should be informative. The purpose of writing should have a goal. We're not writing just to be writing. So you're thinking about what is the objective of that document. Is it to inform SESers, senior level executives, higher up? Is it going to the public? Is it going to a particular segment of the public? What is the purpose of that document? And your goal is to write in such a way to achieve what that is, without the fluff words, without extra ands and ofs and phrases that we can take out. By the way, for my opinion, just can we stick to the facts? I think it was it Dragnet, you guys, or which show was it some years ago? Sort of aging myself. I'm not quite that old, but in terms of just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So we want to present the facts to our readers there as well. We wanted to save time and money. And of course, you always will hear people sort of use those together in terms of, time is money. So while our reader is relying on that information to make a decision, and maybe that decision has to be postponed because if the information is erroneous, it's not accurate, well, that's going to waste time for both sides. Our side I'm saying our, relaying to you all as the government representative and the public or the stakeholders who are to receive that information. And we
Trish, we have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, sorry, we have a question from the audience I think you'll like. In talking about what's, clear and concise, et cetera, someone says it depends on where, when, and to whom you're talking, right?
Absolutely.
So, that kind of gets back to that whole question of what is meant by universal.
Yes, and I like that. Thank you for saying that, because we have to realize that we never really are writing to everyone, right? Everyone. That's why we have as many government agencies as we do, because everyone has a target audience at large. So if it's Department of Education, they may be writing to our institutions here in the country. They may be colleges, universities, community colleges. They could be teachers or even at-home moms who are teaching their children. For example, EPA, all about energy, right? So all of our various agencies, or Department of Agriculture, farmers, and those who are in the marketing of agricultural products and foods. So yes, there is an intended audience, and those are the ones that smartly we want to know more about them, and we'll get into the demographics, because knowing who you're writing to is definitely helpful. So thank you. Those W's, yes, who, when, what, all of that matters. I definitely agree. Thank you so much for that. So let's see. We want to improve reader response to messages. Many times the government is trying to get the public to respond to some kind of document. It could be marketing something that, let's say, the Department of Health and Human Services want response back from the public on something, or they want responses back from doctors or hospitals or et cetera. Well, in that regard, you have to make sure that you've crafted your document well enough, clear enough to get those responses, and don't frustrate the reader, because if a reader gets stuck because they're not clear, well, what do they mean by this? That means that, nope, now we're opening it up for subjectivity, as opposed to being able to factually state what our question is clearly so that they know and can respond to it, okay? And we want to also, and this is important, avoid barriers between you, the author, the writer, the communicator, and the reader, our public at large out there. And again, that's because we don't want to use language that's sort of us against them, to separate ourselves against the audience that we're talking to or come across as if we're smarter than them. We don't want to speak down to anyone. So all of those things create barriers, and we want to be sensitive to that because some people, some members of the public may already have a disingenuous feeling or thought about the government, and we don't want to pile on that by saying or coming across in a negative way to them to separate more, because everyone has heard terms that, oh, the government is a big bureaucracy, or it's difficult to get a response from the government. Well, let us work in such a manner that we work in a positive way, in a wholesome way, that it doesn't bring those types of stereotypical thoughts up to the mind of the public that we're writing to. Okay. And next slide. And again, feel free, express your thoughts, questions, comments in the chat. I'm opening the chat up for everyone to do that. They're most welcome. And
yeah, actually, I'll mention a couple things. Oh, wait, hey, Trish, I'll mention a couple things, and you can address them, whenever it makes sense. One person asked about, using tools like Grammarly, to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow. And someone else asked about, then of course there's AI, kind of the next step. So I just wanted to toss those out there. Maybe at some point you can address those.
And I almost wanted to say, did someone fast forward on my slide deck here? Because I think I have as an example.
All right, no cheating, folks. No cheating.
Yes, no cheating. Okay, no advancing getting ahead of me here. But you guys are a smart group, and you're right on point here. I used Grammarly as an example of the software that can be used. It is fantastic. I use it in my work environment, the iron to iron, because it checks. I like to think that I'm a decent writer, but it's nothing wrong with having another set of eyes, may they be human eyes, to review something for you, an editor, et cetera, or using that Grammarly software, and we'll touch upon it again in an upcoming slide, or even with technology today through automation with AI. Everything is so automated these days, and I don't want to get off on a tangent because it makes me think of autonomous vehicles and things that I was involved in or aware of when I worked for one of the government agencies, and that was definitely something that was being explored at that particular time. So there are 10 principles that the National Archives put together under plain language. And, of course, if you were to go out there, you can find these, or they're conveniently located here in the slide deck for you. So I want to touch on these. And, again, most of this I believe that you already are aware of, and they're just sort of hitting the ball out of the park to emphasize that the plain language should be clear. We've said that. Concise. We have not said organized. Organized is monumental, because if things are not laid out and they're not organized, they're sort of garbled, it makes the reader frustrated again, because they're trying to connect one thought with another, one paragraph with another, and it's not organized. And when we talk about organized, we're talking about layout too, the layout and the format. Does your document have sufficient white space in it? Does it have headers? Does it have headers of different sizes? Because you may have a main header, and then you may have a subheader that's smaller than it. Have you alphabetized or even placed bullets around points that should be made that you want to stick out to your reader early on in your document? Have you included maybe an appendix, because you know that your document is going to have a lot of technical language, and of course you have the responsibility of defining what that is the first time you use certain words, terms within your document, but you can take the liberty of having possibly an index or something where it's defined, where there's a definition that is provided to the reader within that document. So there are many ways to help the reader, and you want to think about all of these things as you approach your document. And is it appropriate for the intended audience? Appropriateness is important, especially in terms of what the government document or government writing entails, because you are representing your specific agency, you are representing the government at large, okay? So always focus on writing for the reader. It's not about our personal opinion. It's not about, even if when you're researching, if you notice, for those who write technical documents or as a researcher, as a statistician, it's your findings, right? It's the conclusion. The research says what the research says. Here are the results. And of course, you may summarize that into recommendations, where the recommendations, of course, add together your intelligence, your knowledge, and the findings to present to your agency those recommendations. But it's not our personal view. We're not just coming up with what our feelings dictate to us. And it's okay to use pronouns, too. I know some agencies may take a position, yay or nay, for using pronouns, but there are situations, there are those scenarios when pronouns are acceptable, when you're wanting to refer to you, using the word literally you, in your document, because right there, we talked about barriers. A barrier is broken. I feel like you're talking directly to me when you say you should do or you can do this. So it's a more gentler way to approach your audience. You want to state your major points up front, too, as early as possible before going into the details later. We'll touch point on an executive summary, right? But in general, when you're writing, what are you trying to say? What are you talking about? If I were to pick up your document and I only have a couple of minutes, can I get the gist from just reading the first paragraph, or maybe you've already outlined it nicely? What are your main points within that document? Where are you going? And then, of course, you caught my interest. Now I want to read further and read the details specifically. Stick to your topic. Stick to your topic. Don't get off point. We want to stay on topic. That's important. We want to limit paragraphs. We don't want to have run-on sentences, and we don't want to have run-on paragraphs, because we're laying out our document to be easily readable, and also for the reader to find, literally from the first sentence of each paragraph, what they can expect within the paragraph, okay? Keeping it short, keeping it concise. And we're going to talk about writing in active voice versus passive voice, because we want to write in the active voice, okay? Use short sentences as much as possible. Use everyday words. So everyday words is sort of like the current vernacular of how we speak. We don't have to sort of put on that radio announcer's voice to come across differently. We again, someone said writing at that 7th grade level. So we want to keep that in mind. Would a 7th grader understand if I use this particular word or not? So ask yourself those types of questions. Again, if you're writing for a target audience that is more technical and that's understood, and you know that everyone understands some common things. For example, there was one agency that I had worked at that I used the acronym OMB, and I did not define it. So I made a goof there, right? Because I made the assumption, everybody knows that's the Executive Office to the White House, the Office of Management and Budget. Well, there was a director who didn't know that. And I said to myself, my mistake. I explained what the acronym means. And of course, government, we have a gazillion acronyms, but we cannot presume that everyone knows what those acronyms mean. So the first time we use a word, write it out. Say exactly what it is. And then in paren, right, it's okay to put OMB. So if I were to have typed out Office of Management and Budget, in parentheses, OMB, correct, and that would be fine. Explain to them on the first reference, and that's what I just said, in regard to when it's first time that you mention something, a term or an acronym, tell them at that time when you're mentioning it, what does it mean? What does that acronym mean? What does this term mean? Explain right then and there. And one of the things that I had heard also, too, if your document is very lengthy, let's just pretend we have a 100-page document, and there was a term that was sort of foreign to the reader, and I explained it on page 1 or on page 2. Well, be courteous and mention it again later on within the document, because now I possibly might have forgotten, what does GBA mean? What does, whatever. I'm just sort of facetiously bringing up and making up an acronym because I have forgotten, because I've read so many pages, and I don't want to have to go back through to find where you mentioned it the first time. So periodically, maybe mention it again in a very lengthy or large document. Omit unneeded words. We don't want to add conjunctions and ands and words that are not adding to the point of what we're trying to make. As a matter of fact, those are our target words to omit. Fluff words, unnecessary words that sometimes are added, but they're not adding to the message that we're trying to communicate. So leave those words out. Number 8 is more to the point of an active voice. It says to keep the subject and verb close together. That helps one to write sentences that are more of a construct of an active voice, because we're in an active voice sentence, you're going to have the subject, the verb, and the object, right? So the subject is doing the action in an active voice scenario. I mentioned this a second ago too, using headings and lists and tables. It makes it easier for your reader. If you're going to have a table, have a caption underneath that table to explain, what am I looking at here? What does this table show me? Tell the reader what the table shows. What information are you conveying to that reader in that table, in that chart? Provide lists, because it's easier to go through a list. You know, when we are grocery shopping, we just put down what we need. We need bread, we need eggs, etc., milk. We have a list, and a list is always good. And headings lets the reader know, oh, we're getting ready to transition. We're talking about this right now, but we're transitioning under a different header, under a different subtitle to something else. So it's sort of laying out your document as in an outline format. And those instances, we're talking about a lengthier document, not a 1 or 2 page document, right? Because we're going to talk a little bit about writing a status report or writing an executive summary. Some documents are shorter than other documents. So use these tips and information accordingly to what you're writing. Okay, and never, never, ever forget to proofread your work. Don't think it's perfect. Don't think that you have not made an error somewhere. So having a fresh pair of eyes is always helpful. That's what I call it. And you could be that fresh pair of eyes if you were to put your document away for a day or two, come back to it, and then look at it. I tell you, you will find things that will easily jump out, be glaring at you that you did not see originally because you were just so focused on writing it. Our minds tell us that what I'm thinking, I've written down, but sometimes that's not true. And we'll keep on reading the document or proofreading it and skipping over something that can be an error, something that's not structurally sound, something that is grammatically incorrect or misspelled, or something that should be punctuated, okay? And a recommendation, letting a colleague look at it, someone who is familiar in that same work environment. And they may not even need to be someone in the same work environment, because sometimes when peer reviewers are employed, they are not always professionals in that particular subject. Most times when people want technical work peer reviewed, they are, but they don't necessarily have to be, because you're looking for objective eyes. You're looking for people who can catch things. So they need to be a good reader, good writer themselves to help you in that regard. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, let's see. So a couple things here. And by the way, we have 25 minutes left. So one person says that if they have like a lengthy document, like you said, the 100-page document, probably a 50-page document, they'll actually have a table for acronyms so that people can refer to. Another person said, actually, if they have a lengthy document, they'll spell out the acronyms again in the different sections instead of assuming that you read the whole thing. So those are a couple things. Another person asked about, well, clear and concise is good, but what if that seems tense? Or it's not tense, terse. Sorry, it's terse. Do you run the risk of sounding terse? especially, in
Right.
government documents.
Exactly, exactly. And there's a balance, in all of this. And so, again, this is what I'm sharing with you today are strategies and tips, but you're going to have to decide based on the document, based on the audience, the person you're talking to, what to use and what not to use. It's sort of like driving a car. We can step on the gas pedal, but am I going 20 miles an hour, or am I on the highway doing 60? How much do I need? How much pressure to apply to the gas pedal to go a little bit faster? So that's going to really sort of depend on that document style that you're writing. And I love the ideas in terms of someone said different sections. Yes, indeed. Because suppose I approach your document, I'm only interested in I don't know something about oh goodness gracious, so many agencies flying in my head. Okay, let's just say aviation. I'm interested in with these drones and everything. I'm interested in reading that. So let's say the FAA has produced a document, and the drones, that's on page 50, section 5. Well, I'm just going to look at that. But now if you've expressed what a technical word was before then, well, I've missed it. I like the idea if you're saying that you're repeating it in different sections again. And so again, for the larger documents, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind that, yes, I call it a courtesy for you to do those repeats, for you to have that table where it's attached, and it has the definitions, it has the list of kind of things in there. We're balancing our wording so that we don't come across as being terse to some of our readers there too, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'm going to pick up the pace here because I do want to get through everything with you.
Yeah.
We're on the next slide of professional documents, and we won't go in depth on these, but I've included these because I think most of you have seen or have heard about one or more of these types of documents. A dear customer service, or not, excuse me, it could be a customer service letter. It could be something that your agency needs to reach out to the customers. I've been in agencies where comments were needed back on regulations that the agency is proposing, a notice of proposed regulation of some type. And of course, the customer has an opportunity to provide comments back on those documents. It could be in terms of any kind of sort of Dear John letter that you're writing. And so, of course, it's going to be on your agency's letterhead. And here is where it's going to pretty much be customized according to what your agency dictates is the format, the layout, the font size, the font that's selected, etc. So across government, I think it's Times Roman and font size 12 that is the general accepted font and font size that's used in a lot of the documents. A white paper, of course, an executive summary. Here's where you're really having to write concisely because it's going to mostly senior level executives. It's going to that mid managers and above. And not only are we respectable of their time, we want to be able to tell them about this huge project as succinctly as possible. And so here's where, again, your concise writing skills come into play with an executive summary, or even a white paper can be lengthy. Executive summary, most of them I've seen some as short as 1 page, 2 pages or so. But again, it's called a summary for a reason, because it should not be the full-blown version, but giving just that executive an overview of what's going on. A grievance letter. You're responding to someone who's had a complaint, about something, and they're not happy. And of course, you have to be a little bit more meticulous and careful because a person, I'm just going to say, already may feel wounded by something if they've written a grievance letter, and now you have to respond back to them. So you just want to be very selective in your wording, how you address them in that letter, but being succinct and very purposeful if you're guiding them to some other source for follow-up. Performance appraisal. This should matter to those who are government employees, because I believe you still receive those performance appraisals twice a year. How you write it up matters because you possibly can get a bonus. What did you achieve? How are you displaying what you achieved? Are you quantifying it? Are you saying, oh, I was able to conduct 10 trainings for the executives of ABC office, etc. I achieved the written report on, or I settled an issue that was outstanding. So you want to write up that in such a way that it showcases your results, okay? Again, not sort of on and on and on, I did this, I did that. The major highlights of your achievement should be displayed there. And we're going to click on to the next because we have additional documents: RFP, request for proposals, recommendations, status report. And I just threw in essays. You're not going to really see an essay in government. I just threw that one in because to point out to you that your writing is not only in your workplace, in your office, in your government agency. It could be even in your own home. You're helping your child write an essay for a particular purpose of funding or for some particular reason. So how you write that essay determines whether or not they are the winner, the recipient, or of whatever is being offered. Your status report, your boss wants to read the status report. They don't want to have to come back and ask multiple questions because it was unclear. You want to have that clear and concise too. I think less is best in that particular instance. Any questions?
Okay. No, I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's advance to the how to hit your target. Here's where we're talking about the do's and the don'ts, and the Grammarly sort of comes into play here too. So I've emphasized more do's here because these are things that we definitely want you to encompass within your documents for you to think about. So first, be very clear before you even begin writing. What are you writing about? What are you writing for? Who's told you to write this? Are you clear on the instructions that you've received? Ask all of your questions up front. What are the expectations? It's nothing worse than you have gone off, written a very lengthy, long document, or you've written about cats and they wanted it about dogs. So get all of that information up front. Ask your questions. Find out what the expectations are. So in your writing, you know that you're on point. You should also know your audience and the demographics of your audience too. The more information, and this I'm talking about in terms of it could be the general public. And again, we say the general public, but the public is not general. Of course, we can break down the public into specific segments, right? Maybe we're trying to, because we're helping retirees or those who have retired, so we're reaching a demographic maybe of a specific age group there. We're reaching a regional demographics, maybe people in the northwest region of the country. So there are some particular things that we take into account there. We're trying to reach teachers. We're reaching other statisticians. We're reaching professionals. So know who you're reaching out to. I mentioned an editor because depending on your document and who's receiving your document, some agencies have professional editors on staff. I've been in offices where that they have persons who that is their sole job and responsibility to edit the government documents, because it does matter how the impression that the public and the reader receives from those documents. So if you're in a space where you can pull in an editor, by all means do that. Also, too, if you're a technical person where something is going to be peer reviewed, that's important as well. Excuse me one moment, please. Excuse me one moment. John, can you read these other points here for me under the do's and the don'ts momentarily? Thank you.
Yeah, will do. Okay, yeah, so one, peer review. This is obviously an important one because sometimes you can write something and it seems to make perfect sense to you, but having peer review it, they might look at it and say, yeah, I don't really get what you're saying. Also research, yeah, that, when writing, going to Google, use whatever resources you have to help you kind of find that clarity, to be able to explain things clearly. I think, software tools, yeah, Grammarly, she talked about earlier. But yeah, I tell you, I'm an editor by trade, but I'm not a great proofreader. And Grammarly does a good job of picking up on things that I miss. Now, everything that Grammarly says, I don't agree with. Sometimes because sometimes you write a sentence in a certain way for a certain effect. Grammarly doesn't really get that, but it's a great tool.
It is, John. I would agree with that it is a wonderful tool. I don't believe, does anyone use that in your government capacity? I don't believe it's a sanctioned software. I know I've not seen it in any government offices yet. So, of course, we have our spell checker. But does anyone use it in their workplace?
Let's see. Yeah. So if you could put in the open chat, if you use Grammarly, would be interested in knowing. Anyone?
Right. I'm not getting any any royalties or kickback or anything. John and I are not getting anything from Grammarly. We're just mentioning it as one of the tools that's out there that a lot of times people will definitely use outside of their government office, because it does do a pretty decent job. I do use it in that regard. Okay, I think we talked about research, and of course you're approaching your document from a research mindset, because you have to look up things. You have to sometimes find out more information. We sometimes don't have enough information. And I mentioned a few examples here because I'll mention the scenario in which I've used some of these. So, for example, when I've looked for other government jobs, or when I looked for an individual because I'm wanting to connect with someone who might be a colleague that can assist me, I looked up their LinkedIn because it provides their profile, and that was very helpful. Companies are on LinkedIn, individuals are on LinkedIn. So we can Google. Everyone knows about Google. Definitely Googling your subject. That's very helpful. Videos on YouTube if you're looking for information, but make sure that your source, be very careful, because everything is not a legitimate source that's out in the public domain. So you have to make sure government to government is always good, using another sister agency's information, going to their websites, etc. Spell checking, proofreading your work. We don't want to overlook that. And then just 3 of the don'ts. We don't want to use the social media jargon. I was being facetious earlier when I mentioned or asked the question if anyone knew what BTW, by the way, IDK, I don't know. See, all of our young people, they would just get that on a snap. This is how they talk. When you're reading documents, you almost need a thesaurus or something to sort of, maneuver through, but we don't write that way. That's not professional writing. And passive voice is not the way we want to write either. And obviously, we don't want to plagiarize anyone's work either. Okay? Let's go on.
And Trish, Trish, just to let you know, we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, all righty. So what I'm going to summarize for you, ladies and gentlemen, sort of in a context. I won't be reading through the slides, but just sort of giving you highlights of each one, using simple words and phrases. And let's look at the bottom of this slide here. For example, and let me say this as a preface, nothing is wrong with using, as some people would say, the big word, but if there's a simpler word, let's err on that side, because again, we're trying to write at a level that communicates across the public spectrum. So use hungry as opposed to famished. Can we use quickly as opposed to expeditiously? Say something is next to as opposed to adjacent to. Buy versus purchase. Okay, that's an example there, but you could still use purchase, because I know in terms of with our various acquisition offices, there are different purchases, or et cetera. Use the word about versus approximately, and something is helpful versus advantageous. So the point here is just using simple words, keeping it short, keeping it concise. Okay. We're on the slide of importance of clear communication. I think we've said enough, and you all even volunteered so many great answers why it is needed and why it is important for clear communication. It's easier for users to understand. They can find information that they need. They're informed about what you're writing about, and they can make informed decisions because they have good information. And it's just a simpler, easier way of helping the American people connect with the U.S. government. Address the reader. We're on the next slide. Always write from the perspective of you're talking to the reader themselves. That's just important key. That's a takeaway in and of itself. Address the reader always. Think of them. Have them in mind. The next slide reads clear and concise writing. And that's a list of some of the things that were previously said before in terms of make sure your writing is informative. It's incisive. It's serious because we don't want to come across as if we are writing in a humorous format or facetious to people or talking down to our audience or anything like that at all. And I think these other things that you've seen or heard, use short sentences. If a sentence has 25 words or more, you need to look at where the and is or where the semicolon is. More than likely, you can break that into a separate two-sentence there. Now, there is a difference between voice and tone. I'm going to advance to the slide where it says active versus passive voice. And the active voice is one where the subject is up front and the subject is doing the action. So for the example here, you must submit the request form to the approving official, right? So it's saying you are the subject, the action is submit. So this sentence is good. It's concise. You must submit the request form to the approving official. Also, save the case number in your records. You will need it for future inquiries. So those two are just examples of an active voice. And I have passive voice on the next one. It says active versus passive. Passive voice means that now in terms of the subject, the action has been received on the subject. Okay, so in this particular instance, you're having the order is not the subject now; it's the object verb, and then the subject is way down there at the end of your sentence. So think about that and look for that in your sentences and reconstruct them so that that subject and verb are closer together. And here are some examples of a passive voice. I'll just read one. The request form must be submitted to the approving official. And that could be actually said differently in regard to that approving official is the subject and to move that up front. Okay. Tone matters because how you say something can leave your reader with a particular feeling, and we want that right feeling to be conveyed to them. So just in this example on the slide, tone, here it says, you were not very clear. Maybe someone could be slightly offended because you're saying you and they feel you're pointing that out to them, and we could have simply said, we did not understand your message. It goes from pointing the finger at them to you taking the onus for that, but saying it in a professional, gentler way is helpful for that. Versus here's another example. You did not send a payment. Well, a better tone would be, we did not receive your payment. You see, and just switching that up a little bit there. Okay. And the next slide.
And just so you know, we have 5. Yeah, we have 5 minutes, and we want to make sure we do get to the quiz at the end.
Okay, and let's do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, avoid those lengthy run-on sentences. Again, 25 words or more, sort of like that measuring yardstick that lets you know you need to look back at that sentence. So let's jump to the quiz. We've covered a lot, and there was more. Our time got away so fast. I thank you all for participating, and now we have a short 4-question quiz for you. So I'm going to turn this over to John to advance through it.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one, let's start with the basics. What is plain language? Is it use of acronyms to keep your sentences short? Grammatically correct sentence structure that uses clear and concise words or phrases, or use of industry-specific jargon? So please go ahead and pick which you think is the correct answer. And I want to mention, while you answer that, one thing I did put in the open chat is one tip I received from an old school journalist a long time ago was after you write something, read it aloud. You'll pick up so much stuff. So
good tip.
That's something I still do today. I sit and read it aloud, and that really sounds clunky.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's great. So you guys are picking one of the 3 answers here. And
yep, looks like about half have taken it. So we'll just give a few more seconds here to let people take it. And by the way, on the Grammarly, it looked like I would say about probably 4 out of 10 say they can use Grammarly, maybe 3 out of 10.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a mixed bag. All right, so let's see what the results are here. All right, 99.3%. That's pretty good.
Okay.
So what do you think? So the use of acronyms, I mean, like you said, use of acronyms are great when you're writing professional to professional, right?
Right, but the correct answer is B, right?
Yeah.
And you right, grammatically correct sentence structure that uses clear. Right. Use of acronyms, of course, within government, there are going to be a gazillion acronyms. They just need to be spelled out. They need to be spelled out in sentences short. Mm-hmm.
All right.
We don't want to.
Let's look at the second question.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
No. I was just saying we don't want to promote the use of acronyms by themselves.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Which of the following is one of the 3 don'ts? So we saw the do's and don'ts earlier. Don't use social media jargon. Don't use passive voice. Don't plagiarize. Or D, all of the above. So go ahead and submit your answers to that. And while they're doing that, a question for you, Trish. Several people in the open chat were talking about contractions. Yay or nay? Are contractions good or evil?
Oh, no, yay. I would say definitely yay. You can use contractions. Yes, you can. Because remember, we emphasize in terms of using sort of the everyday vernacular language, sort of as people talk. And we talk every day to one another. Oh, I can't go to lunch today. See, we say it even without thinking about it. Oh, I can't go to lunch today. I don't think I would tell a colleague, well, I cannot go to lunch today. I mean, I can say it that way, but yeah, you start sounding a little formal, right? And again, think about your audience. To whom are you writing? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. There's the results. Yeah, all of the above is the clear winner here.
Yes. Oh,
but you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with any of the individual ones.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Let's look at our next question. Which of the following is an example of active voice? So this is active voice. You must submit all documents by the deadline to be considered. The document should be submitted by the deadline to be considered, or submit all documents by the deadline to be considered. So let's see what you have to say about that. This might take a little longer to think about. Yeah, and I just want to remind people, I know, we did so much good information here, but the slide deck is available. You can download it from the console now, or you can download it later. So I really encourage you to do that. Lots of good information, definitely worth referring to going forward. So please do that. There's also lots of other great resources in the Resource Center to look for. All right, let's see about the results. So Trish, between A and C, you want to talk about the difference between those two?
Yes, and you all got it head on. I mean, just right on nailed it again. C is the answer, but A is also a great runner-up. And the difference is, while the question asks for active voice, but which one is the most concise? And I sort of threw a curveball in on that one there. So for active voice. And concise is C, but A is acceptable as well. So for those who were thinking or leaning toward A, you got it right too. Kudos to you.
All right, let's see. All right, so here's the statement. Your documents should always address the readers. Is that true sometimes, always, or never? So this is our final question. And while you're answering that, I just want to thank Trish. Man, there was so much good information here. Really appreciate all this, and I do hope people, download the slide deck to, dig into it more. Also, wanted to let you know, let's see, let me see,
We have
quick reminders.
references at the end.
Yep. I do want to thank
John,
everyone, thank our NextGen Partner Alliance for helping us put on this NextGen Summit. All right, let's see the results. I know we're running out of time. Yes, always. Is that the correct answer?
That's the correct answer. Always. The reader should be in mind, should be front of mind, always. Yes. You guys did
excellent.
That. I'm sure everybody got a 90 or above. Thank you all.
I think so. No, A's all around. All right, so just a couple more quick reminders. Don't forget to fill out your CP evaluation form so you can get that credit. And if you haven't done so already, head over to the exhibit hall, check out our amazing booths. They're filled with a lot of additional information and resources. Up next is our lunch keynotes. Those are going to begin at 12:30 Eastern, so you got about 12 minutes to catch your breath, but then we will see you in the main hall. So again, thank you, Trish. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you in the next session.
Yes, thank you all.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.